My guest this morning served in the government of Zimbabwe as Minister of Energy and Power Development. He previously served as Deputy Minister of Justice and Legal Affairs, and as well as Deputy Minister of Transport and Infrastructure. Mr. Fortune Chasi, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's good to be with you.
Wonderful. I'm so excited to have you. We are running this series on the Zimbabwean economy, which is a specific study on finance, economic planning, and policy issues. I'm glad to have you with your vast experience serving in 3 different ministries is surely some profound experience. Can you just start by telling us how you became cabinet minister? If you can start even like with the point you became deputy minister up until the point you then served as the responsible minister of a given portfolio.
Thank you very much. Let me begin by saying that I had worked in the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, which is our central bank, for close to 20 years. And I felt that it was now time for me to enter politics, principally to work with people in the community that I grew up in, which is Chiweshe in Mazoe. And of course, I campaigned and was successful. As to the background, really regarding how the actual process of me becoming a deputy minister, you never know. All you hear is that you have been appointed to this position. Mm-hmm. So I became Deputy Minister for Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs under the stewardship of former President Mugabe. And I was fortunate enough to serve under the current president as his deputy, which I found to have been a very fulfilling and educative process because there is no course, at least in Zimbabwe, where one trains to be a minister.
A minister, yeah, that's true. That's true.
Or you learn on the job. And I was fortunate in the sense that I was serving under a man who had traversed literally every ministry in government, and so quite knowledgeable about the different facets of government, how they work. He had served, of course, as Minister of Justice, as Speaker of Parliament, as Minister of Rural Development, Minister of Finance, Minister of Defense, a whole gamut of ministries that he had led. So it was, in a sense, extremely, a privileged position in the sense that I could extrapolate from his experience and learn from, what I needed to do if I was interacting with specific ministries. He knew people, he knew issues, and that was really great. So worked together very well. I knew of him, obviously, and I think he knew very little about myself because I was a very small player in the political field. I wasn't a public personality, so to speak. I was working for a government agency for some time.
So if you can tell us, I understand you served in the government under President Robert Mugabe, and then you also served under President Mnangagwa. What would you say is something that you liked the most, serving as minister under President Mugabe and as well serving as minister under President Mnangagwa?
So to some degree, it's a bit of a fiction to say that I actually served under the former president, Robert. Yes, because I was a deputy minister, and as deputy minister, you really do not attend cabinet. Your minister attends cabinet, but you do have access to cabinet minutes as they are churned out every week, which gives you the guidance regarding the issues that your ministry must be handling at any particular time, and government's policy positions and decisions that cabinet has made. But like I said, I was privileged in the sense that there was a lot of hand holding. We had 2 meetings during the week. In fact, before I get to that, my first meeting with my minister then, before he even became vice president, was I was pleasantly surprised in the sense that he really gave me a long rope and freedom to operate. On our first meeting, he told me, Chasi, this is what I propose that we do. I'm going to give you a number of departments within the ministry that you are going to run, and you come and report to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I really, was very energetic and enthusiastic.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that, and I was aware, especially after my first meeting with my minister, after a number of months, that some ministers never gave their deputies an opportunity at all to do anything.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So Ministry of Transport, it was
the late Biggie Matiza.
Or the late Biggie Matiza.
Yeah. So I had a lot of free play. I could initiate things, go and report to my boss, and he would give me, the necessary direction. Sometimes he would acknowledge that, look, I wasn't aware of this. This is a very good idea. He was very good at acknowledging the good things that you've done. And, even at that level, you still behave like a baby. You want to be acknowledged. You want your boss to say that this is very good. A pat on the shoulder, run with this. Maybe you can tweak it here, go and do this, and then let's run with it. And there were instances when, for example, you would say, I've seen that you are very good at this particular aspect, and let's go to this meeting and you are going to lead me. So it was it was very humbling. The other thing that I found to be quite exciting about the way he led the ministry or related to me is, the empathy that he reflected when I worked with him. For example, one of the few things that happened early in my tenure as deputy minister was that my son was due to graduate, I think within 3 weeks of us being in the ministry, and he was in the UK.
Oh.
And so, I had this conflict to say, I've started a new job, and
you can't just leave.
You can't just take off.
Yeah.
So I informed him that my son is graduating, and so the first thing he said is, so are you going? Then, I was a bit dumbfounded. Then he said, no, you must go and support the child. You must, if there's anything I can do, you need to go. You have to go and support the child. You must be there when your child graduates. So, it was a very liberating experience, and particularly because I didn't know him personally before I joined the ministry. I only knew him on account of what was in the papers and so forth. And so I found that he really had a soft heart. He was kind, somebody who laughed very easily. He could laugh at you or at himself or at another person. So we had 2 meetings every week. We had a smaller meeting where we met with the Attorney General at the time, together with our permanent secretary and Commission of Prisons. And then every Wednesday, we had a management meeting with all our directors in the ministry. And if he was 5 minutes late, I could start chairing the meeting. Sort of guy who says, when I'm not there,
don't do anything.
nothing happens. No.
Mm-hmm.
So when he walks in and you try and hand over to him, he says, no, Chasi, please go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So I would run with the issues, and then he would ask for permission to speak because I would then be chairing the meeting.
Oh,
and
nice.
of course, I would defer to him to speak. So I think overall, yet I learned other management skills that I didn't have
before.
Improved, on what I had. He was significantly a slave driver, a fact that I became even more familiar with when I became Minister of Energy. So, when people speak about my tenure as a Minister of Energy, of course, they don't know what was happening in the background and the heat that I was feeling. So that's a broad brush of my experience with the current president and the former Minister of Justice.
Of Justice. Okay, wonderful. Wonderful. So now, of course, you then become Minister of Energy and Power Development. But before we get to talk about that in particular, what would you say is something that you did not like, something that you can consider to be the administrative or political challenges of being cabinet minister under these two leaderships?
As I indicated, I had immense amount of energy to execute my mandate. You could say I was overzealous to some extent, and I really wanted to be on the ground most of the time. By this, I mean to say that I wanted to ensure that energy problems that affected the common person who were facing the mammoth parastatal that our electricity provider is. It's arguably the biggest employer in the town with a very wide impact domestically and across industries. And I found that people have vulnerabilities as consumers. And I also found that to a large degree, whilst we had power shortages in the country, some of it was artificial, some of it was simply a failure to put the customer ahead and be considerate, concerning particularly, the small, ordinary consumer who has got no voice. And so I had contact details of all our regional managers and even district managers across the country. And some people used to complain that I was micromanaging. As I wasn't. I could see a gap in terms of service delivery. And so people had access to me. They called me from Silobela, from Zarabani, from Bocha, and tell me about a specific problem. And somebody could tell you that we have had this problem for 15 years. But through my intervention, it could be resolved within a day or two, simply because I had an active interest in what was happening on the ground. A specific example is an elderly man in Vic Falls, where ZESA had enacted a transformer right at his entrance. He was disabled and moved in a wheelchair, and he was hit by electricity and thrown almost 20 meters away. And that transformer was in the way of him extending his house to make extra income. And for years, he had been talking to this and nothing happened. So I went to Vic Falls on other business. Then I capitalized on that and took ZESA management there to meet this old man. And within a week, that huge transformer was removed from where it was. And it is those little things which people really think have got nothing to do with being a minister, but for me, they were key. They're the ones that gave me a kick when that person was so excited that government was being impactful. And I think that ministers don't have to wear suits. They really need to be,
On the
going.
ground.
And if you had access to some of our videos with the late parents, Shiri, who were crisscrossing the country in overalls, and would only wear suits on Tuesday, which was a cabinet
meeting. Yeah.
Cabinet. And so to answer your question, what is it that you didn't like?
Or it is that experience.
Because I wanted to be on the ground most of the time. Cabinet would intervene in that process. And so you are really feeling that, I need to go to Slobela. There are these specific challenges, but then you have to attend a cabinet. So I think that's really a short story of my experience with the ministry. But as you know, energy is cross-cutting. It covers all sectors of society and the economy. So anything that goes wrong or right impacts on the people.
Yeah.
So we had excellent professionals within the ministry, particularly the permanent secretary, and together with that, I also had many professionals at ZESA. And at ZERA, the Zimbabwe Energy Regulatory Authority. And one has got to depend on their professionals. I was a mere lawyer, but I can tell you within a few months, people within the sector began to call me Engineer Chasi, because I was an avid reader. You had to understand, it was my first time to come across terms like cost reflective tariff. Nobody uses that language in everyday parlance. So you have to read. I'd never seen a power station, and I had to consult people who had led ZESA before. I had to go to their houses for them to give me advice, and I found that very useful. And then you also develop skills to analyze the problem and see how you can break it apart. For example, I was in a situation where I had to break down the power problem in the country. I identified that foreign debt was a problem, where to pay our debts. I identified that there was a huge debt from ordinary members of the public, commerce and industry, government departments. So we priced those apart and started attacking them. So we're able to pay off the debt that was owed to South Africa and Mozambique. And so I was crisscrossing the region to deal with that, pay some money, negotiate for power, improve our supply, and also speaking to commerce and industry to say, you must pay. You can't consume power for nothing, because this was owed about 2 billion United States dollars. People were just consuming power without realizing that we're really digging our own grave, so to speak. Even government departments, including my own Ministry of Energy, excuse me, they could not tell me what our energy consumption was and how much we're paying per month. And so I started a program of installing meters in all government departments so that we curtail usage of power, because some of the lights would be on 24/7, computers on 24/7, because the ministries themselves, there's no line item talking about electricity in their budgets, because it was like for free. So we really had to juggle around and deal with many things at the same time. Of critical importance was the fact that I identified corporate governance to be a key issue that needed to be addressed, a key enabler or disabler of energy availability in the country. For example, once I got in, as I began to understand the issues, it became clear to me that ZESA was a feeding trough, and that there was a lot of corruption around tenders and so forth. And so as a result, I set out to appoint a board. And as far as I remember, I was the first, if not the only one, to advertise for boards. So I advertised and asked people to apply to be board members for ZESA. And my desire was really to also bring in young people, young professionals, which I did. If you look at the profiles of the board, yeah, and young female professionals deliberately, and also, so in addition to that, I also made a deliberate decision to somebody from the Consumer Council of Zimbabwe, who had consumers on the board and be like their watchdog, so to speak.
Yeah.
In that board, sadly, they've passed away, and I'm not sure if the ministry has, or whether the minister is going to replace that that person. But it wasn't just about young people; it was a deliberate desire to intermingle, more experienced people and young people, and also infusing our power arrangements with even the new ideas coming from people who have trained in renewable energy. So because ZESA plays a critical part in this, you can't have a 300 megawatt power plant without interacting with ZESA, because they are the off-taker of that power, and so we needed an understanding of that. So yeah, it was quite exciting in that regard.
I do get a feel of the major accomplishments that you made as minister, given the challenges that you had and what you were supposed to, to achieve. But now getting back to an important point that you talked about, what is your take on this idea that appointing somebody with the technical know-how of that given ministry doesn't matter? Does it matter to have somebody appointed who has technical knowledge of that particular area?
I think that it has more to do with the mindset of the person. You can have a very technical person who is a very poor manager and who has a very poor appreciation of the implications of their job, or they're simply corrupt and motivated by a desire to pocket money themselves. All those factors impact. I mean, to be honest, when I went into the ministry, I had no idea what ZERA was, the Zimbabwe Regulatory Authority, Energy Regulatory Authority. And I used to joke with them to say that I thought they were an NGO, because I didn't know what they were. But through a process of self-education and capitalizing on the expertise you got within the ministry, without the ministry, within ZESA, other experts, consultants, and workers, it's just all those people were sounding boards that enabled one to fully understand and appreciate issues. So yeah, it's something that can be debated. The old age debate as to whether managers are born or they're trained. Like I said, I was never trained to be a minister, because there's no such training. But my own public spiritedness was the major driver that enabled me to deal with the numerous issues that wanted to deal with. You had to be accessible to the public. You had to demystify the position of a minister.
That's true.
Yes, So, and also to depoliticize your role. I mean, I had many colleagues in parliament from the opposition who had problems in their constituencies with power. And I would simply say to them, look, if it is possible, I can come over and we can discuss with the community. And we did that. And I cannot recall of a single case that we dealt with together that we were not able to solve within a few days. I mean, you had a school that would say, we haven't had a transformer for 7 years. And so we meet with the ZESA people, their senior management, and within a day or two, there is energy
it's fixed
at the school.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Vision 2030? Do you strongly believe that Zimbabwe can really become a middle-income economy by 2030? And is it open enough for business?
I think that it is possible. But I also think that there are many things that we have got to be dealing directly with, which are key enablers for this to happen. The Vision 2030 is not something that is exclusive to Zimbabwe. Many countries in circumstances that are different from ours also have a Vision 2030.
Yeah.
Their political history is different. Their economic history may also be different. But I think it is doable. And I think that we are at a stage in our country from both political and economic standpoint, where we are enacting the building blocks of a stable economy. And it's obvious to all and sundry that a lot of our infrastructure, whichever area you want to look at, had been ignored and in the country. Piece of infrastructure to be in pristine condition. That's, I mean, the destruction of the infrastructure, it happened over a long period of time. And I will not play the blame game or speak to politics, but it's a factual truth that our roads had not been subjected to any maintenance, that our energy infrastructure had not been subjected to any maintenance or improvement. Our hospitals, name it, our transport, our buses, they were no longer there. And so the public naturally can never be patient with a government department or government generally where development is concerned. It's never too early. It's always too late. And so this is why you find that people can poke holes into the development process, because the architecture of our economy required that we go to the very basics. So the Minister of Finance has got to do what he has got to do. Make tough decisions which appear not to work because it's a process. So because he's the one who handles the purse, he becomes the fall guy. He becomes the most unpopular person in the country. And yet he's somebody who is really knowledgeable about what he is doing. The problem really is not really with the public. If you are in a public position, as ministers are, you must be prepared to take the flight. And it is proper that members of the public must put you under pressure and keep you on your toes to ensure that you deliver. So my global point here is that we're at a point in time where we must work hard to put in place the basic limbs of our economy, of our country, whether it is in political terms or in economic terms. And one of the things that forms, which has festered over a long period of time, is of course corruption.
Yeah.
It plays a big role in retarding economic progress.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether I can say enough is being done. I know some stuff is being done, but there is always an undercurrent of improper conduct in business transactions, which can increase costs of goods and services to the public. And if you look at, let's use this ZESA example.
Yeah.
If procurement in that particular sector is affected or infected with corruption, it just means that the cost of power to the consuming public
It's going to be high.
It's going to be high. So when you then begin to talk about a cost reflective tariff, you are building into that tariff costs of corruption, which really has nothing to do, or ordinarily should have nothing to do with the production of power. This is why I said that I had a lot of emphasis on corporate governance, because I knew that if we had good corporate governance at board level, that would be able to deal with issues of corruption and scrutinize procurement, say, of transformers, or say of meters, and say, these costs, are they the actual costs? Is this the right price for this? And not people who would gloss over because they've received a backhander. So definitely corruption was an issue, is still an issue. And it's not, as people always want to portray, a phenomenon that is peculiar to public officials. Some of the key players in corruption are in the private sector. They are the ones who grease a relevant person in a parastatal to make an inappropriate decision that is in their financial favor. So we must have a broad approach to the problem. We need a relationship that exists between, say, the public and service providers. We are now cultured to a situation where if somebody wants a place, somebody today was telling me today to say, I want to be one of the people who carry out the census. But the process of getting into that is very difficult. There's favoritism. You know, they're simply saying that the process is corrupt. So we need upright people that run our institutions to deal directly with matters of corruption. And for those who are in positions such as I was in as a minister, you really must decide what you want to do. If you want to make money, you go into business. If you want to serve the people, then you stay away from business transactions or interests that could create a conflict for you, because once your vision is clouded by personal interest, it is not possible for you to then do the work properly. So yes, corruption.
True. Yeah, you can't make dispassionate decisions based on issues. Definitely. So now, getting back to the talk on Vision 2030.
Yes.
What do you think that government can do better to accelerate this progress so that it's attainable?
You know, judging from my experience as a minister under the leadership of our current president and the vice president, they were, or they are, real slave drivers. You could not sit in cabinet and waffle, you know. they really push you to be productive. I think part of the success that was achieved in tackling COVID, for example, was because of the very results-oriented approach that our leaders took on everything, whether it was procurement, vaccination, every aspect of COVID. There was a committee dealing with each one of those issues, and people would be cross-examined on the content of their reports. And this was every week. So, and people would remember what you said last week. Where are the figures now? Where are we today? Why have we not achieved this? What needs to be done? So the methodical approach was very, very important. But one cannot see the Vision 2030 in isolation from politics. Unless we find it important as a people to come together and narrow the gaps that exist politically, whether intra-party or extra-party. It's very difficult when you are not moving in unison to achieve these very, very critical objectives. You will have seen that there has been a lot of work happening within the roads infrastructure sector. A lot has been done to revamp agriculture. But if you look at one ministry that I really think your students would benefit from looking at, the Ministry of Higher and Tertiary Education, the approach that has been taken, the scientific approach to education, the need for, I mean, education 5.0 is really a game changer. University professors were more interested in peer-reviewed articles, which once they are in the journal, that's the end of it. But now there is a clear demand by government to ensure that universities are transformative, they're economically viable. So I'm sure you've come across some of the projects. In my own constituency, there is a new unit put in by the Ministry of Higher Education to deal with profit. It wasn't there. Across the road from it, there's a new hospital that is being, built to train medical staff. And so as an insider, as a cabinet minister, you ask yourself, well, if these things had been happening since 1980, where would the country
be? That's true.
Yeah, so it's really a process, and there have been unexpected imponderables, things that have just happened, which have sort of caused the government to switch direction temporarily. Cyclone Idai is one of them. When I was Deputy Minister for Transport, we were working on roads in Manicaland in particular. We're fixing bridges, and the cyclone came and cleaned everything up. We were very joyous that we had achieved key milestones, but an act of God occurred which cleared that. Nobody anticipated COVID, for example, but government was able, within the limits of the resources that were available, I think, to contain it significantly. Of course, we lost many lives. In fact, as I speak to you, I actually have COVID. So I think there are genuine attempts to improve the condition of our people. I don't think we will ever be 100% in agreement that, yeah, this is what is happening.
Mhm.
But if you know what has been happening and the efforts that are being made, you just expect as a leader that criticisms will be made, and you must take them into account in your day-to-day operations. They may appear to be troublesome or irresponsible or whatever, but you have to take into account public sentiment regarding the work that you are actually doing. So Vision 2030 is achievable,
Yeah.
but it requires that we all sing from the same hymn. We all work together. We do not unnecessarily distract project implementation for a variety of reasons. It could be politics, it could be corruption, is a huge possible retarding factor. So yeah, possible.
Yeah, I'm happy that you raised the point of unnecessarily disrupting project development and progress. What are your thoughts about our parliament? Does it have the political will to drive legislation that can make Zimbabwe a middle-income economy by 2030 as we want it to be?
You know, sometimes on bad days, I must emphasize, you wonder whether we really should have a parliament. I think it's better now. I'm not quite sure why. We had and still have a significant number of very good MPs across the board. Of course, in political terms, things are always in black and white. These ones are good, these ones are bad. But I know for a fact that if I was going to parliament, there were MPs that I had to be sure that I've got my facts at the fingertips, because they will ask you very direct and searching questions for the benefit of the public. One such MP is Themba Mliswa. He still does that, throws up important issues and attends parliament regularly, always prepared. Of course, sometimes he can be argumentative on issues, but you need somebody who speaks issues which others, for whatever reason, can't themselves speak. So yes, I think that we generally have a good speaker, in my view, very well balanced, and it doesn't gloss over issues, no favoritism, and we have good numbers of MPs who are motivated by a desire to serve the public, in my view, on either side of the political spectrum. You will have rabble rousers, people who will cause problems. You will have people who will generate fake news about others. For example, for your own information, you might have come across this, that I own a vehicle called a Cullinan, which is worth $1 million.
Wow.
And the video was actually generated and it was circulated. And today there are people who still believe, even within my family. You know, I'll have nephews and nieces who ask me about this car, please give us a ride. I've never seen it in my life. So I think that evil mentality that is meant to disparage a person's character because they perceive you as a stumbling block to what they would like to achieve in pecuniary terms.
Mr. Chasi, I do not know how to thank you. Viewers and listeners, this was Minister Fortune Chasi. He served in the government of Zimbabwe as Minister of Energy and Power Development. He had previously served as Deputy Minister of Justice and Legal Affairs, and as well as Deputy Minister of Transport and Infrastructure. Minister Fortune, Thank you so much for the time that you have given to talk to me on this show.
Thank you so much. I feel deeply honored to have been part of this discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you so much and have a good day.
Thank you.